Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello, good morning everyone. We are from Group A and we will explain about the role of the reader experience in the process of the reading. The member of this group is me, Yasa Nur Malina, and my partner, Yasmin, Rifdah, Luthfiah. So, let's move to the first material. First, about artistic and aesthetic. The theories of reader response were quite initially presented by Wolfgang Iser. Iser said, in considering a literary work, one must take into account not only the actual text, but also the action involved in responding to the text. He suggested that we might think of the literary work as having two poles. First, the artistic pole is the text curated by the author, and two, the aesthetic pole refers to the realization accomplished by the reader. We cannot identify the literary work with either the text or the realization of the text. It must lie halfway between the two, and in fact it comes into being only through the convergence of the text and reader. So, the point from this is reading is an active and creative process. The next material about phenomenology and reader. The phenomenological theory of art places full stress and the idea that in considering a literary work, one must take into account not only the actual text but also and in equal measure the action involved in responding to the text. Iser draws on Roman Ingarden's concept of intentional sentence correlatives. Iser's point is the connection between various sentences and complex and sentences are not established by work itself, but are determined by the reader. Thus, Roman Ingarden confronts the structure of the literary text with the ways in which it can be realized. Next, about reading process by Wolfgang Iser. First, schematized views. Schematized views is the reader perspective for the work, and reader uses the various perspectives in order to relate the patterns. The text as such offer different schematized views through which the subject matter of the work can come like, but actual bringing to light is an action of concretization. 2. Concretization. Concretization or concretization is the realization between the text or artistic and the realization reader or aesthetic. The literary work cannot be completely identical with the text or with the realization of the text, but in fact must lie halfway between the two. The work is more than the text, for the text only takes on life when it is realized, and furthermore, the realization is by no means independent of the individual disposition of the reader. Though this is in turn is acted upon by the different patterns of the text. 3. Virtual dimension. Virtual dimension is the text produced by reader response when reading wishes represent the coming together of the text and imagination. Iser draws attention to two important features of the reading process. The first is reading, a temporal activity, and one that is not linear. The second important feature of the reading process is when we were confronted with gaps or unwanted implication or frustrated expectation in the text, we attempt to search for consistency. It is the virtuality of the work that gives rise to its dynamic nature, and this in turn is the precondition for the effects that the work calls for. Unless, Steiner said, in literary text, it is something like an arena in which reader and author participate in the game of the imagination.
Thank you, Yasa, for the explanation. Now I, Yasmin, Luthfiah, will explain the next topic. So next are anticipation and retrospection in the process of reading. Iser stated that the hiatus that blocks the flow of sentences is the product of change and is to be regarded as a flow. This is typical of his adherence to the classical idea of art. If one regards the sentence sequence as a continual flow, this implies that the anticipation aroused by one sentence will generally be realized by the next, and the frustration of one's expectation will arouse feeling of exasperation. During the process of reading, we have seen that there is an active interweaving of anticipation and retrospection, which on a second reading may turn into a kind of advanced retrospection. The impression that arises as a result of this process will vary from individual to individual, but only within the limits imposed by the written as opposed to the unwritten text. This ties back to anticipation in that a reader wants his or her expectation to be realized. This is one of the fulfillments that a writer must present. Retrospection comes in once the reader has been fulfilled and can therefore let his or her imagination and experiences weigh in on what he or she has read. Next, the last topic is we're gonna discuss about achieving textual interpretation and textual efficacy in the process of reading. According to Iser, the aim of conventional classical interpretation was to uncover a single hidden meaning within the text. Meaning was considered as representative, having a direct reference to the outside world, and hence the literary work was considered to be a vehicle for the expression of truth. Also, interpretation aims to instruct the reader as to the text meaning, value, and significance. Such a model of interpretation promoted the treatment of a literary work as a document testifying to characteristics of its era and the disposition of its author. Meanwhile, the efficacy of a literary text is brought about by the apparent evocation and subsequent negation of the familiar. What at first seemed be an affirmation of our assumption leads to our own rejection of them, thus tending to prepare us for a reorientation. And it is when we have outstripped our preconception and left the shelter of the familiar that we are in position to gather new experiences. This means during the reading process, the work's efficacy is caused by its evocation and subsequent negation of the familiar. In other words, the reader thinks their assumptions are affirmed by the text, then led to see that these assumptions are overturned, and they enters the assumption of the textual work itself. Their reorientation marking expansion of their experience, which learn to incorporate unfamiliar perspective. I think that's enough from us. Thank you for watching and listening. I hope our explanation can be understood by all of you, and we apologize if there is a mistake. Also, if there is a question or opinion, feel free to deliver it to us in group. Don't forget to stay healthy and be happy wherever you are. Thank you once again. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.